We are live. My name is Jeff Good, and I'm with ITIP Ohio, and with me are the folks from West Muskingum Schools, and it's Michelle and Amy, and we appreciate your time here talking a little bit about your project.
Thanks.
Well, first of all, can you, we'll start with Michelle, and if you want to give your name and your project name.
Okay, I'm Michelle Scott. I teach 7th grade social studies, and our project name is basically the Greek and versus Rome showdown.
And Amy?
My name is Amy Tyner, and I am the 7th grade ELA tag teacher here at West Muskingum Middle School. And what we were able to do is piggyback on Michelle's Greek versus Roman showdown and pull in the argumentative essay side of that.
Wonderful. Now, you obviously shared a driving question, and what was that driving question?
Which civilization, Greece or Rome, impacted later civilization the most?
Wonderful. And I'll go with Amy now. What were the major steps of your project?
In the ELA, what we did is we looked at our foundation we had already built of writing argumentative essays, and we reviewed some of those key points and terms such as claim, evidence, counter, claim. And then what we did is we took the argumentative essay and we turned it into a storyboard. So we thought, how are we going to set up that storyboard? How are we going to turn usually what is a pen paper written form of an essay and make it into a presentation? So we were able to do that. And throughout the whole time, we were investigating different tools and technology that the students can use with each of their claims, how they're going to back that up with their evidence, and then how they are going to construct and present their board for the showdown.
Wonderful. And Michelle, what were your major steps in your project?
I guess I started with the foundation, the knowledge that the students were going to have for of Greece, the ancient cultures of Greece and Rome, and so I laid down that foundation first with them, and then Amy actually assigned the topics. But as she assigned the topics, I taught them. We kind of investigated some different technology tools. I decided to. I wanted to learn a little bit about QR codes and how to use them and scan them and generate them. So I decided to teach that whole concept to that period, and so I taught them how to do a QR code and generate them, and we practiced them, and every display board, I believe, had a QR code on it of some sort that led, when they scanned it, either led to a PowerPoint, a video or something like that. So I took that upon myself to kind of do that. Amy did a lot of research, so what I did in my room was lay that foundation. We talked about some different technology things, and then the kids came in and they would work on their projects in my room as well as in her room. So I guess that's
you laid a lot of the research even in the beginning of what is Greek,
right,
what is Roman, what the cultures even look like. So
right,
you had a lot of the background information.
Yeah, the background
too.
knowledge,
yeah.
And she kind of expanded that with the research part of it. So.
Well, great. Now let's talk a minute about yourselves, and I'll start with Michelle since I'm already on Michelle.
Okay.
What would you consider an important thing that you learned in this project?
I pretty much learned that the kids are much more able to grasp the technology and run with it better than probably most adults. So that's probably the most important thing that I learned as I was doing this whole project, is I think they aren't intimidated by technology, so they just go with it and they try to figure things out by themselves, and it's not where maybe, I would go ballistic if I couldn't figure something out. So that was kind of thing that I noticed.
They were so calm. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And Amy, on your end, what was some of probably the most important thing you learned?
Having the tag classroom, they understand the concept, but it's always that digging deeper. And so working with Mitzi, what we were able to do is really learn how to integrate that knowledge of that subject area and how to pull that technology in and use it as a tool or as an aid in presenting that information. Because what I always tell my tag kids is, okay, now that you know, how can you teach it to someone else? How can you explain and teach it to someone else? And so also, I love that the kids were making those connections. We've got Ted that's joining us now. So So we were able to have the students make more connections, and I even think the more that they got involved in it, they realized, oh, we've got to expand our knowledge a little bit, because again, they had to teach that concept. So they were learning the new items, and they were also talking about them at home and in different classrooms. Michelle and I would find other teachers, even one of the high school teachers whose daughter is in our class said, oh, my kids are making this augmented reality, like Olivia taught me how to do it. And so that was great learning that it was kind of spreading throughout the district, that, you know, even now the high school teachers were, you know, having them do the same things in their classrooms. So it was kind of cool.
Now, Amy, if you had to do it over again, what do you wish you would have spent a little more time on or done differently? And then Michelle, I'll ask you too.
I'll tell you, the project was really overwhelming because I have so many ELA concepts, and really the Greek and Roman literature is not something that I pick up because we deal a lot with the 1940s in the 7th grade class. So something I really struggled with is, am I giving them the background that they need in the literature part of it? So, and I would love to read the myths and the mythology and things like that, but I couldn't, you know, step on another teacher's toes that's going to teach that in the next year or whatever. So I think that was really hard for me to stick with my standards and stick with my topics that I needed to cover, but also get into the research and the different things with that. But I think the technology side of thing was great. I wish I would have slowed down a little bit, but also kind of combined it. We kind of struggled with the timeline that the project had set up versus the timeline that we were running. That was something that I think we both struggled with a little bit.
How about you, Michelle, if you'd have done, maybe spent a little more time on or done something differently with the project?
I guess I'm into learning new technology too. It doesn't really scare me so much, but I like to learn it as well. So I would have liked to spend more time as a class, maybe together, working on maybe doing some modeling first with it, and then kids letting them practice and letting them get a wide range of technology where I felt like I was piecing stuff together, you know. And I wish I, you know, would have had a list of different technology things that we could look at, and we could have done that together, and the kids could have, you know, it was kind of choppy. So I guess I would have liked to spend more time on that technology part. But I'm kind of the same way with, you know, the timeline, so I didn't have enough time to get that in. So next time I'd like to try to weave that into the project.
Now, I'll stay with Michelle. You give yourself a gold star. What would you say of the project you did your best work on?
I do think that the QR code scanners was something that, and I think I did the best job on that because I actually taught them that concept. They practiced it in class, using the content I was doing at the time, and then they were able to generate those on their own. So I spent time talking about that, so I think that part went well. And I do think they had a pretty good background knowledge of Greek and Rome culture, so that when they did those projects, that they had a pretty good foundation for that.
And Amy, your gold star work, what would you say you did the best work on?
I think overall having those gifted kids realizing to think outside the box, using that topic of argumentative essays, something that they've learned since 2nd, 3rd grade, that everything doesn't have to be pencil paper, that they were able to make different claims, they were able to use that technology, and they were able to make their point very clear. So, I love that idea.
That is great. So let's talk a minute about the project, and I'll stay with Amy. What would you say was one of the most enjoyable parts of the project?
You know, I think actually just making myself sit down, and Mitzi and I were constantly, we were including Ted, we're like, hey, we found this new item. Do you know anything about it? Let's research it a little bit more. And kind of just saying, okay, we're going to devote 20 minutes of our class this time to, you know, like Mitzi said, okay, everybody try this and everybody try that. I tried new things that I wouldn't have tried before. And now I have my other classrooms that are adopting those concepts, and my 7th graders coming into my 5th and 6th grade tag group, teaching the Wii video, teaching the augmented realities, teaching the iMovies and the QR codes. And we presented at a board meeting, and we had our superintendent, you know, scanning a QR code. And so that was kind of cool just to get that conversation out there. So it was interesting. So that's the part I enjoyed the most, was just thinking outside the box and doing something different.
How about you, Michelle? What was the most enjoyable part of the project for you?
It actually, the showdown took place in my social studies class, and so we got to share it with the whole 7th grade. So the 7th graders were up. We had positive comment sheets on every display board, and the kids could vote. And so seeing the kids, you know, the period that we worked with, they did so much work on it. It wasn't kind of a new thing by the time we were done. The other 7th grade classes were like, why didn't we do this? And, you know, they made great comments. So it was wonderful to see the comments the kids were making. And just when I observed how they were looking at the things that the kids made and said, oh my gosh, how did they do that? So the excitement that the other kids in the whole 7th grade got to, you know, experience to me was probably the most enjoyable thing, that they really liked it and they really, you know, looked at the things that the kids produced.
Now, on the other end of the spectrum, Michelle, is what would you consider one of the least enjoyable parts of the project?
The time management for me was probably the least enjoyable, just because you know, I felt stressed and pressured at times because I needed to do this, but I needed to have time for these kids to work on that. So the stress of trying to manage everything and all the content you're supposed to teach was kind of, for me, the project part that was the worst part of the project, was just trying to manage that time for the kids and give them the quality of time that they needed to do the projects.
And Amy, what would you consider one of the least enjoyable parts of the project?
I think overall the timeline was pretty frustrating sometimes, because my kids were moving at this pace, but they needed to move at that pace according to hangouts or check-ins or, you know, different things. Plus, again, this was something we were adopting, so we were kind of adding it into an already packed curriculum. And other times, in poor Ted, I mean, I had him on speed dial, you know, because it was like the technology was frustrating because it wouldn't link up, or things would cost money, and we're, you know, a very small school on a tight budget, so we weren't able to pay, you know, $10 for the upgrade. And, you know, they did a lot of Pixton. They spent, you know, a couple weeks learning about Pixton, and they all created these wonderful comics and different things like that, and then find out it's like, oh, now for $34 you can print it, and, you know, and I'm like, you know, and so, I mean, it was kind of frustrating. You know, and I kind of think, you know, overall, like Mitzi said, if we had like 1 day or 2 days to learn about all these advances and then give the kids more time to slow that down, that would have been just so much more relaxing. Yeah, I think so.
Amy, what would you, if you had to do this project again, what would you change about it to make it better the next time?
The project overall, I think if we met one time in the summer as a whole group, I think if there were different throughout the year, and I know it's busy and we're in different meetings, but maybe even quarterly to meet and we had Shane here one day, and you know, Ted came up and was able to meet with us, and I just think overall, if we could have had Shane to us over and over and over again, you know, we're like, oh, that would have worked out so much better, you know, just to learn about all those things.
Amy just touched, though, on if you had to do your project, your specific project that you did again.
I would have just set a timeline of like 2 weeks, and I would have done it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Michelle, how about you? If when you talk about your project, what if you had to do it again? You know, and let's say you're going to do it again next year. You know, what would you do to make it better the next time?
I'd probably do a lot more modeling first, because I think later that would have helped, and I probably would have squished my timeline down as well for me, and and focused more, and I probably would have added in my year at a glance, I would kind of add maybe a week or two, probably 2 weeks to do this project and get it done all at one time instead of spread it out. That's what I would have done differently.
Now photo bombing in the background, we have Ted, and we're going to talk a little bit about technology. And I had asked Michelle and I had asked Amy, you know, I know you were integrated in the process, and Ted, what are some observations that you made before I address the situation with technology with these two?
As far as the projects?
Yes.
One thing, and they keep on talking about the timeline, And I give both of them credit because I think this was a highly personalized group project, which when it becomes personalized, it expands your timeline. And with the technology component, they really gave the students freedom to choose what method to present their project, which is great because the students took ownership of it. But at the same time, they would find something they want to implement that now we have to go and learn it to be able to support it. So I give them credit for letting students the freedom to do that. And I think what we started talking about, and students didn't only get the content that they were teaching, but they actually had to learn the delivery method. So now I think we're starting to talk about having the students create documentation on how to use those tools for the next class. That's kind of what I saw. A lot of personalization. Timelines were chaotic at times because it was so personalized. But I think they got some great projects out of it, and students really took ownership of them.
Ted, thanks for that input. I'll go to Michelle first to say, talk to me about all of the different technologies. How did you integrate that technology or those technologies into your project? I know you've talked about a couple things. If you want to just embellish on those a little bit.
Right. The QR code scanner things, every board, I do believe, had those. And we had some, frustrating times at times trying to get through it, but the kids worked through all that. The Wii video, actually, when Shane came and we were trying to figure out how to do our video portion of the whole project, I learned how to do Wii video, and some of the kids learned how to do Wii video, and I really liked, that part of the whole thing. So that technology, that Wii video, I thought it was really easy to use. The kids, I think, learned how to utilize it well. The QR codes, the Erasmus is really, really cool, and that is one of the things that the kids in the other classes were like, whoa, how did they do that? So the Erasmus thing, and Amy, actually, I think the kids kind of found that, and explored with it. And what I found, too, with the technology is that you would find pockets of kids that would be kind of experts in that area. So we had certain kids that did an Erasmus, so they, could teach other kids how to do the Erasmus part. So I think Amy did more of some of the other things, but the QR scanners and the Wii video type thing, I think were extremely. And of course, we used the Chromebooks and the iPads that we had, what we had in class. So.
And Amy, on your end, what were some of the technologies? How did you integrate that technology component in your project?
Of course, we used, we piggybacked on the QR codes and things. We actually got into the Pixtons a little bit, where maybe they would talk about their argument, and then someone else would come and give some feedback in the little comic strips. We used Google Docs a lot, where we set up quizzes for people to take. Ted came in and helped us set up websites for like the Greek literature, and they had different icons that they could go to there and different links that they pasted into that, which I really liked. They created slideshows, and they really, really got comfortable with their Chromebooks, which were new to us this year. So that was really cool to see them kind of using that and sharing devices and links to other kids through that. So, I just think, their iPads and different things like that, they all became more comfortable with using those things. And I think in the projects, I'm going to kind of piggyback into the next question about the impact the technology had. In our academic showcase that we're having tonight, many of the boards have QR codes. Many of the students used Wii videos. And so they're honestly just collecting it and growing with it and going from there. A few of the kids got into some Glocksters and some different things like that. So that was really cool to see all the different, ways that they were going to present their arguments on why they felt that their group had more of an impact than the other group.
And Michelle, on the same side of it then, and Amy had addressed some, what did you see, or what was that impact of that tech integration with your students, and even talk a little bit about how that tech integration impacted yourself?
I think kids are getting more comfortable with not just the standard technology that they are used to. PowerPoints, are out, and other ways to present things. We did have people do Prezzies too. I forgot Prezzies. Yeah. So hopefully this project will lead to students maybe, expanding on it for whatever other subject areas that they do, and they utilize maybe the technology they learned in this project, but say, hey, I didn't get to use this type of technology in this project when we'll try it in this project. So it exposed these kids to a lot of different type of technology that hopefully they will use later on. For me, I as well learned, and like I said, the WeVideo is something that I'm going to look into using when I instruct in my classroom. I can use that as part of my teaching tool. So that kind of impacted, me with that and the different type of things that I can add to my own instruction to better it off.
Now, Amy, I'm not gonna hold you to this. This was supposed to be the last question, but I found it intriguing, and I'm going to ask you this question. You just got done saying that your students now are using a lot of the tools that they used or that they learned about within this project for an event you have. Mm-hmm. Tell me if this, this is that hypothetical world if something didn't happen, but if this project wouldn't have happened, what would you envision your students doing for the event that you're talking about tonight instead of what they're actually doing?
Well, and that's one of the things, Ted's been in the classroom, and he's saying, you have these wonderful displays and everything. We use like a trifold board and some different things like that. He's like, okay, our next step is how do we go all digital? How do we, get away from, the Chromebook, or I'm sorry, the trifolds, and go all to a Chromebook or a video or, some different things like that. So, I have kids doing claymation videos tonight. WeVideos, and so it's just, I just think, they notice something and they're like, oh, that's cool, how can I do it? And they go home and they play with it, and like Mitzi said, they become more comfortable than we are, and they learn tricks of the trade, outside of the classroom.
Well, I just had to pick up on that because I thought it was interesting that you commented, that they took a lot, your students, and we talk about impact of that tech integration, that's now I love to hear it, that's now their go-to, right? Yeah. Instead of what they used to go to, now their new go-to, you've kind of set a new standard for their go-to technology when they're called upon to try to do a presentation or whatever. So that's exciting because you're kind of changing what your students are now in their toolbox are willing to say, this is what I'm gonna work with. So that's exciting to hear too.
Good.
Hey, that's all I have to ask you, and I appreciate your time on this.
Thank you.
So I will do a wrap up, and once again, I'm Jeff Good, and I'm with the folks from West Muskingum Schools, and appreciate both you and your video bomb Ted in the background your time this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.